listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. It's Martin here. More unfortunately for me than for yourselves, I'm in my dining room in London as opposed to the hotel room in New York, so not quite as glamorous as 2 weeks ago, but nonetheless, Toby and I had a great time after we'd done the webinar and ended the week in style. I don't know if you might have seen the videos of it on my blog and on Disability Horizons, but we did a little 7-minute video of everything we got up to, culminating with Shrin and I going up an escalator in our wheelchairs, which was quite adventurous. So nonetheless, we made it back and recovered from everything that went on. That was all good. As always, a couple of people sort of logging on a little bit, dribs and drabs later on, so I'll take it a bit slower to begin with. Most of you looking down the list have been to webinars before. We've got a couple of newbies. I think I always, when I sort of planned the topics, thought that leisure and travel would be the most subscribed to, because it's a little bit cooler and jazzier, and it's a bit more of a fun side. Obviously everything else that we've done before, as we'll learn as we go through these slides, all build up to the foundations of being able to have sort of leisure and travel time without sort of the education and the foundations of independent living. As we'll see here, it wouldn't be possible. But yeah, as I say, I thought there'd be a bit more people sign up, and that seems to have been the case. So welcome to the new guys. I suppose call it housekeeping really. General sentiment is you can obviously see what's on my screen as opposed to a live video feed of me, and you should have a chat box that's come with the software whereby you're able to type. So I can look down on my little switchboard here and see that Vic is saying yo yo yo, the street Vic from Harrow. So good to see you again there, Vic. There's a picture of you coming up later, by the way, mate, so brace yourself. And otherwise, just send little questions if something comes up in the middle. I try and keep my eye down on the questions, but obviously when I'm talking away full flow with the slides, I sometimes can miss that, but either way I'll always come back to it at the end. And I think in many ways this sort of more than the other topics really might be a little bit more interactive. I think I'll set the scene and go through the sort of structure that you're all quite used to now, but it'd be good to get your comments and feedback and questions on the world of leisure and travel. I can sort of compare you all kind of talking to each other and raising other issues that maybe I've overlooked. So I'm hoping this will be a bit of a livelier chat at the end, so I might leave a little bit more time for Q&A as well. We'll see how we go. So we'll whack on with the slides. Again, a bit of a old hat now. I can't believe this is the 5th webinar actually. It's crazy when you're dreaming up and sketching something out on paper as a sort of planning that I'd like to do this, and here we are now a couple of months down the line, and the 5th webinar, it's flown by. It's been a lot of fun. It's interesting looking back at the videos, which they'll all be available on my website, so if anyone else has missed and that's interested, they can always come back and watch the webinar video at another point. But yeah, it's sort of interesting to see how everything's developed, both from you guys getting used to the technology and getting used to sort of the message that I'm trying to convey, and how hopefully it can be applied to your lives or friends and family of you, or if you're a professional in your day job. But yeah, also sort of for me really, I think I've learned a lot around the Diamond Theories developed and understanding sort of how to articulate my experiences, but in different ways to maybe those that I did 5 webinars ago. So it's been good. It's been good fun. So I'll skip through the intro, as most of you have seen that horrible Blue Peter style picture before and know all the crack, but generally have SMA, master's degree, lived independently in London for 4 years, hectic social life as I'll allude to on the leisure as well as world traveller, and obviously lots more core plans for life. I think what's been interesting since I left Scope and 3 and a bit months of self-employment is it's scary not knowing what's around the corner and where the sort of next paycheck comes from, so to speak. But equally lots of interesting random things have been and do keep happening. So long may that continue, and I say not just on the paycheck front, but just on working with interesting people and going to interesting places. So professional experience, work experience, which we touched upon a lot on the teenage years, and then in my general employment for 5 years at Scope was a fundraiser, was the main job, but I did lots of training around diversity, I did campaigning, a lot of PR work. Today Scope rang me and asked if I'd do an interview with Richard Herring for his radio show, so I'm still doing my PR work through Scope as well actually, and that was a really cool interview actually. Generally when there's interviews it can be quite serious about disability, whereas Richard is very au fait with disability, does a lot of fundraising for Scope, and it was definitely a more comical, lighter side, but it equally did explore and delve into disability as a social problem, and we were having all sorts of random chats, so it'd be interesting how much of that gets cut out, and I'll obviously let you know when that's shown. But so I'm still very much in touch with Scope, and I'm doing a webinar series with them as well. I've written a bit of freelance journalism, personalisation work with Hackney Council, so explaining to service users how I use direct payments and how that's opened up my life by employing PAs to be more in control and have choice of what I do and spontaneity. And that was obviously what we did 2 weeks ago, for those that were here, was all about that. And then, social media and new media, so delivering things like webinars to you. So I'm running my own social enterprise, aiming to change the world for disabled people. It's going to take a while. There's a lot of things to do, as we all know on this webinar, a lot of barriers still in the way, but I think it's a double-sided coin where disabled people are more aspirational about picking bigger goals and knowing that they can achieve great things, then that will raise the bar with lots of disabled people achieving. And then on the flip side, it's about educating society on the barriers, that they should remove those barriers to make life easier for disabled people, and obviously getting rid of stereotypes and stigmas. So that's broadly how I'm trying to do that. And combining all the above. So as you'll have always seen when you signed up, the outcomes, hopefully you guys can go away with some goals of your own around leisure and or travel. I can't explain enough how, yes, obviously I like my leisure time, my travels, and that's a personal preference, but this isn't about everyone on the webinar or people that they know that they should therefore go on a holiday somewhere where actually they don't want to go. It's more about saying, are there things in leisure or travel that you've never done or you want to do more, but for whatever reason you're not doing it, and then trying to create strategies and a plan so that you can work towards that. And even if it takes a year, 5 years, you can still end up doing that. I think the overriding point is never say never, but it's about your goals, not what I am doing. I just bring my personal story to illustrate things. So we'll look at how to plan, prepare, travel to and enjoy your goals. I think we've touched upon transport and independent living, but that has a big prevalence here as well, because as much as when we look at leisure as going to a pub or the cinema, the travel part is a big barrier, so that's something that has to be considered. And then considering your goals within sort of 3 areas, which is your community, your country and your world. So again, we'll look at that in a bit more detail, but trying to sort of put things into boxes to comprehend it a little bit better. And some top tips of useful resources and tricks that I've learned. I think for anyone that wants maybe specific websites and that sort of thing, you can ask me at the end or I can email you afterwards, but I've realised that broadly these sessions are more about mindset and about positivity and can do, and then the detail can be worked out later by asking the right questions to the right people, and they'll obviously differ from my experience again there, but obviously where possible I always point you towards helpful resources. So what we'll cover in more specific detail is the good old diamond theory, the now almost tried and tested one, how that theory applies to this topic, considering the barriers relevant to you and relevant to leisure and travel, find some solutions, and then the question and answer session. So I will whiz through this one quicker than normal because I think there's only one person, or there's only two people that haven't attended before, but hopefully they've come across this on sort of my website, and equally you can see down the bottom, if you use that URL on the philosophy page of my blog, you can actually download it. It's a 20-page free ebook, but essentially it's about life stages. So as a disabled young person, the parents are more in the decision-making side of it and understanding the goals, the barriers, the solutions. So that would be education and social inclusion. The teenagers is probably disabled teenager and semi the parents, and then you add in work experience in those years. For those that attended to that session, you'll know what I'm talking about. Independent living, I broke into two different webinars. So we did employment, housing, equipment and transport as one, and then personal care as a whole webinar onto its own 2 weeks ago with the fantastic assistance of Toby and Shrin. And then at the top of the diamond, which is much more about life fulfillment and adventure. So I've got a frog in my throat there. So we're looking at career progression, which I'm not going into in this webinar, but it's sort of possibly one further down the line. There might be a webinar on employment and career progression, where it might look more specifically at CVs and attitudes around employment and employers and how to deal with interviews and all of that world. So when we touch briefly on it in Independent Living Part 1, but that would be a biggie. But then obviously you've got the two parts of the diamond at the top, which is adventure and travel, and then leisure, and that's where we are today. So we're going to apply that philosophy at the top left, and then use those resources on the bottom left, which is knowledge, mindset, people, technology, funding, and campaigns. As I say, I'm going into a lot more detail in the book on that one, but I think we'll leave that one for now. So the two goals, as I've put in many of the webinars, the overarching sentiment is about to be included but appropriately supported, and then that obviously very much applies to leisure and travel. And the way I've sort of differentiated the two, it's not exactly a scientific definition, but I would see leisure as something that's a bit more local and a bit more regular. So it could just be having a friend round to your house to have a cup of tea and watch a film and a bit of a catch up, and equally it could be going down to the local pub or a local club, as it were. It could be a nightclub, or it could be like a hobby club, whatever else it is in your local community. Sports would obviously be included in that as well. So I'd see that more as leisure, and then travel would be more kind of rarer, special occasions and further away. So obviously that would include things like holidays. And then when we look at the bottom part, city, country, world, city would be leisure, world would be travel. And I think within the country, you might travel all the way, say from London up to say Newcastle for a holiday, so that'd be travel, but equally you might do that as part of a sporting club, so that could kind of fall in the middle. But you can see broadly where we're aiming this at anyway. So here's the good old definition of barriers, where you can have a little read through when I'm talking, but essentially that condenses down that there's three types of barriers that society has imposed unwittingly. So it's not that society has done this on purpose to just screw disabled people over, but because there was no real awareness way back when the medical model was around, and basically that's about disabled people were sort of the problem, they had to be cured. Whereas I'm talking academic thesis here, but the social model is saying that the barriers that are from society fall into three categories, which are physical, attitudinal and organisational. So the physical environment would be where there's steps onto transport or into a building, and when there's a ramp or a lift, then actually there is no disability and the person isn't disabled. They're able to get into that building or onto that transport. Attitudinal is people's attitudes, so bus drivers being a bit narky about helping you get the ramp out, that's disabling. But when they're open and helpful, then actually you're not disabled because you're able to get on the bus like anyone else. And finally, organisational, which would be around policies and procedures. So if we have a bit of a think about those three areas, I want you guys to do a little bit of type in the chat box and a bit of thinking. So what we're going to do don't sort of type lots of different things. Just type in the box in one go. Once you're ready, hit send. So I only get one actual entry per person. And what you're going to do is write leisure and then dash and write a particular example of a barrier that would be in the way. So it could be, you think of what leisure might be to you. So it could be cinema, it could be going to the pub, whatever it is to you. And then think about the things that stop you from actually getting there. And then also do the same for travel. So whether that's, going skiing or going on a beach holiday or travelling around the Amazon or wherever it might be, it could be a weekend away, a couple of hours, whatever it might be, a couple of hours away, whatever it might be, you work that out. So write leisure, dash, and then a specific example of a barrier to you, and then travel, dash, and another example of a barrier to travel for you. So I'll give you a minute to quickly think and write down your specific examples to your life, or you can hypothesize if you're not disabled, you can sort of just share what you would imagine to be a barrier as well. And then I'll sort of read a couple out and then we'll move on, but it's important that you guys get to think about how the barriers apply to leisure and to travel. I'm just going to mute, we'll have a quick swig of water. It's horrible how quiet it goes when I have to mute it. I have to look into getting two-way speaking ability, although it might get a little bit busy and shouty as well. But so anyway, we've got stuff coming through, so I'll begin reading out. So Andy has said with leisure, it's access. So I assume that, Andy, you mean to sort of access to the building, so whatever type of leisure you're trying to access, that there is, the actual building is not accessible, which would be a physical barrier. Vic's put leisure, public transport issues. So sort of from my knowledge, that probably would be anything from not having an accessible taxi or even a bus. Although London, where Vic and I live, is a bit more improved than some more remote areas. But even if there are ramps, as we talked about, there can be public transport issues with the driver maybe not having the right training, or it could be members of the public as well. So yep, I agree with you there, Vic. Pamela is saying leisure, young people with autism not being welcomed in cinemas. So again, that's around an attitudinal barrier of society. So that's a tricky one in terms of taking a cinema full of people and educating them there and then. But it would be more of a base level of getting from a younger age children and then adults to understand what autism is, and then why someone with autism in the cinema may be behaving in a way that other people are not used to, and then learning to sort of be okay with that and accept that and be inclusive. Andy said travel, flights, transferring from my wheelchair to airport wheelchair to plane seat. Yeah, Shrin, Toby and I, done that one a few times, especially a couple of weeks ago, and that one is horrible when your life is in the hands of a couple of airport staff that sometimes don't seem to really know much about what's going on or have the ability to lift you, and you're lugged out of your chair into these horrible old chairs and then moved back to the seat on the plane. I think one of my absolute ideal progress would be to get on a public body that would make the decisions around aircraft travel, and somehow get them to change the rules that if they could strap a wheelchair down safely, which I'm sure they could do, that you could stay in your wheelchair, because believe you me, having a dead bum after 7 hours of flying to New York is not the most pleasant of feelings. So yeah, absolutely agree with that point there, Andy. Jackie saying leisure, example venue entrance, and then travel needing to take a carer. So There can obviously be who the carer is and if they maybe would enjoy that activity, and as much as it's their sort of job to come along with you, etc. There is that element of human interactions, of having a carer that enjoys those things with you, and also the funding as well. So if someone comes along but they're working, they really shouldn't have to pay for that out of their wage. But then on the flip side, it's not fair if the disabled person has to pay twice. I'm going to skim through a little bit. We've got quite a few coming in. Jackie said leisure, no staff to support late at night if going to club, pub. Travel, knowing that people are actually accessible when they say they are they really telling the truth? Yeah, so misinformation as well. Trish saying leisure, getting into a night because of steps, that nightclub, and travel, going on holiday, equipment doesn't suit apartment you're staying in, i.e. toilet chair will not fit through the bathroom door. Yeah, that's something we've experienced a lot of times. Vic said more thinking of access to tube and rail in terms of public transport. So yeah, so I talked about things that do have provision but maybe attitudes are bad, but Vic's saying actually on the tube and rail there's not even a baseline of provision. Leisure access from Michael saying boats, so feel free to expand on that if you want to, but sort of getting access onto boats I imagine can be difficult. I'm not a big water boy myself, actually. I've not been on many boats before, so it'd be interesting to look into that. Vic's asking when we're going to Tenerife. I'm not sure, mate. We need to get that one booked up. Once we've done, we can set a couple of goals at the end of this and then get strategising and planning. Pamela saying travel, only one wheelchair space on buses, can't travel with friends who are also wheelchair users. Yep, I've had that a few times in London where we've had to, one of us has to wait behind to get the next bus. Trish put leisure, finding pools that are accessible, travel if your wheelchair breaks down when you are abroad. So brilliant. I'll stop it there. We'll move on, but that was really good actually. There's some good variety of different things to work on, and all different types of barriers as well. Where to summarise again, there was the three types: physical, attitudinal, and organisational, and they all fell into those categories over the course. Okay, so this was just a little summary really of my thoughts prior to knowing what you were going to write, but really it echoes a lot of the stuff that you've put. We've got access, toilet facilities, transport, equipment, attitudes of business or public venues, using health and safety as an excuse when actually it's not true, and around individual staff members and also peers. I think in a more positive sense that if you access and leisure and travel, having friends that are totally cool and understanding about disability, that's a positive way of overcoming a barrier as well. And then on procedures, sometimes health and safety actually will be an issue, so then there has to be ways of overcoming that. Funding for personal support, and then I mentioned about sort of funding for PAs to access the leisure, so that there will sometimes be discounts as well as when we look at solutions. So okay, I'm going to launch a poll for you here now, if I can get this to work right. Okay, so you should be able to see the poll that I've just put up. So, do disability related barriers stop you accessing leisure and or travel? So, of all the things we've talked about, ever actually stopped you from doing things, or do you still, no would mean you still get on and do it one way or another? So if you click yes or no, and then I'll share the results of the poll. Be interesting to see how many of you have it, the barriers have actually stopped you from accessing, leisure and travel. 38% of you have voted, 50% have voted. Okay, we're coming in now. 75%. Wish I'd found this little gizmo earlier on in the series. It's pretty cool. Okay, so 75% have voted. There's a couple of you who haven't yet. The last couple can do it, and I'll give it a few more seconds, and if not, I'll just share this result and we'll close the poll. Okay, I think we'll close it there now. So to share the results, you can see, is that 57? It's quite small. Yeah, 57% of you said yes. So that, it was almost half and half until the last couple voted. But, it's good to see that the 43% haven't let those barriers get in the way and they still manage. But obviously, and I would say, I'm sure there's times the barriers have stopped me as well when I look back. So that 50%, should be zero, but unfortunately all of these things do, get in the way and stop disabled people from accessing leisure or travel. So let's try and look forward to some solutions. I'll remember to hide this now, because when I did this on the Scope webinar series, I left it up and then they couldn't see my slides for the rest of the time. Just to say, the last barrier, but not a social barrier, is self-perception. So there is an element about usual worries, that everyone would have worries. Certainly when you're sort of 17, 18, you go to the pub for the first time, you're going to be nervous and have worries about what it's going to mean and what's going to happen. But then when there's disability-specific, additional needs as well, then obviously that's another matter. So I'm just going to close this window here. So many things going on my panel. Right, okay. So yeah, it's just to sort of outline the fact that while there are these external barriers and they need to be understood and strategized, which we'll look at to overcome them, it's also very much about the self-perception, having the confidence to go on and do that. So let's take a cinema trip as an example. So the goal, the outcome of the whole situation is to go to the cinema. So in many ways, I think this is across the board, regardless of what leisure or travel it is. I would always approach it as anyone would, just disabled or not. So you want to know what film you're going to see, where the nearest one is, or the most ideal in a generic sense cinema is, and the times and all that sort of stuff. But then obviously when you're probably on the web, where you ring up and start working out all this stuff, you then need to think about those barriers that we've just been through. So you want to know that the cinema is going to be accessible, and I guess looking at the funding side, you'd want to know if there's any discounts for your PA, and again, this is very much, as we keep saying, applying it to your world and your life and thinking of your impairment and your barriers. But broadly speaking, with the cinema as an example of leisure, it would be about working out the film you want to see and then looking at the needs you have, and whether that would be on the website, ringing up, could be asking friends, it could be even asking professionals, people like the Jennifer Trust and Scope would all have ways of helping you to find that information that you need. And so yeah, really once you've identified the different barriers, whether it's access or it's money or transport, whatever it might be, you want to list all of those barriers down and then start thinking creatively about ways of solving them. So hopefully some of those little anecdotal thoughts would be away. We'll move on to applying the diamond theory, but that would broadly explain for me the way I would be looking to go to the cinema. And I think the other thing, as much as it's in the planning, so if you know that everything essentially is going to be okay, that it is accessible and there are discounts and you can afford it and you can get there still will be things that will go wrong on the day as well, and I'd always expect the unexpected. But that's part of the course, and you just have to learn to be resilient and thick-skinned to those situations, but never let it put you off from doing it. So moving on to heading abroad, the landmine that is trying to fly, as we just touched upon with Andy's comment, flying abroad. So we talked about the need for identifying, where it is you want to go. So we looked at the cinema, it was about which cinema. So I always, again, start from the base point that where is it you want to go? Is it a beach holiday with friends or family, or an adventure holiday? And is it through a group? Is it on your own? Whatever it is, you then take that base point of what your needs and your limitations are, and you again start to break down all of the different barriers that are going to be in the way. And I would recommend, when doing the holiday stuff, doing it as far in advance as you can. I mean, I've flown many times, so I am a bit more au fait with the routine and the tick boxes and the things to do, and they've become second nature to me now. But obviously to begin with, for me, sort of 10 years ago, it was a different story. And I used to, when I booked my my Australia trip, I think it took me 9 months sort of planning and then booking, because there were so many different things around the flights, the transfers at the other end, the equipment such as hoists, making sure that there was accessible hotels. And I had my carers with me and that they were funded and they would be happy with the package and all that. So there's a lot of different things to bring into play. But again, if you have that overall goal and then work the steps back for the things that need to be done, and then plot it on like a calendar or put dates and deadlines for each task, you'll know that each week you're making a progress towards actually booking that up. And in the end, even if it takes 5 years to actually get around to get the confidence and then work out the solutions, you will get there in the end. So I think I've got a couple of slides sort of a bit more from my experience, and also I'd love it if you can ask me some questions to help open up things that I maybe brush over, and obviously you can also have a chip in with your own experience and thoughts as well. So there you go, Vic, there's the picture of you, mate. I told you you'd be making an appearance. That's at Vic's house there. And yeah, really, I just think overall those pictures sum up my world and my life of leisure. So it's going around with friends such as Vic's house and hanging out for an afternoon. Down the bottom left, that's with my good friend Billy, who I've grown up with, and we were out in the garden having a barbecue there and a catch up. And then the top left, that's a festival in June. It was at Finsbury Park called London Fest, and Bob Dylan and many other kind of folk acts played. And most of you who follow my blog will know I'm more into R&B, hip hop and indie music, but it was cool going to sort of a different experience. And that fellow there you can see was a random guy I met, and we had loads of stuff to chat about music and life. And I think for me, leisure should be about broadening your horizons, meeting everyday friends and doing fun things, and also every now and then doing things that are a bit new and opening up the world to you. So in terms of the Diamond Theory, we've got the 6 resources that I sort of offer as help to find solutions. So as we said, mindset is very key. It's sort of having the confidence and the ideas and the ambition or the want to get out there and do these things. And obviously if you just genuinely don't want to do that, then that is cool. But there's a lot of disabled people that would want to, but see too many barriers in the way. And I think if you can find some strategies that I'm offering, that might help in time to sort of overcome that. The knowledge, so what are the barriers, what are the solutions and the information needed. The people, so talking to friends and family about what you want to do and then helping you, and talking to professionals such as the Jennifer Trust about that would be more obviously with someone with spinal muscular atrophy, but someone like the Jennifer Trust would be able to help with the sort of policies or procedures of cinemas or places to go online as well. Technologies, we talked about having hoists if that was necessary, or just the right wheelchair that gets you out and about on the town, and then the funding. So by using a mixture of all of those, I hope there are things that start to stir around in your brain as potential solutions. And likewise, travel, really, I sort of said about how with leisure it should be at points opening new horizons and everything, but travel is so good for that. And I think as much as a time when you are on holiday abroad, or even if it's in England, but further afield, that period of time you're away is very healthy to get a change of scenery and to relax from day-to-day life. But it's also more than that. I think there's the fun in the booking it, and the build-up to going away is all exciting. And of course, when you come back, you've got the photos and the memories and the experiences that live with you for a lifetime. So that's amazing as well. But also when you go to new places and you meet new people from new cultures and new languages and new food or whatever it might be, then there's something, it kind of changes you as a person. You have more confidence. So I think, when I went to Australia, I'm not saying I was unconfident, but to have achieved that, the sense of achievement gave me more confidence when I came back to London or came back to the UK. to then go get back on with my job or things day to day. So I think it's a way of really improving quality of life, not just for that time that you're away, but also other points of it as well. So again, applying the resources, we've got mindset, so as a can't bang on enough, positivity, confidence, never give up, the knowledge of where you want to go, what's going to stop you, how you overcome it, the people, as we've talked about before, and also don't underestimate people in the trade. So, for example, when I went to Australia, the lady at the travel agent was a local travel agency. She was instrumental in making sure that everything went smoothly. And, you know, she hadn't really got any prior disability training, but she had good customer skills. So she, you know, customer service skills. So she listened to what I needed, and together we worked out what the answers were. So always be willing and forthcoming about getting people in the industry to help you as well. Again, technology. So Shrin's got this amazing contraption of a hoist which folds up a lot more than your average hoist, and we took that on our California road trip last year, so we didn't even need to hire a hoist out there, so it saved money, and we were able to just take the hoist with us. And then that comes back to preparation and, you know, telling the airlines that A, you've got a wheelchair, and B, you'll be bringing this big hoist with you. And generally, you know, if you're sort of on the front foot and explain you will be bringing it because you need it, then they're going to be less likely than if you say, we might want to bring a hoist, we're not sure if you allow us. They're more likely to then throw policies and procedures. So it's about being, you know, back to confidence there as well, really. And of course funding. So when I went to Australia, I was able to get a bit of extra social care funding for those 3 weeks, and that will, you know, enabled me to pay my PAs enough that I don't think they made a profit. So they paid for their flights and hotel, but then I paid them for doing my care. So in a roundabout way, they were able to go to Australia for 3 weeks, and it didn't sort of cost them out of their personal money. That my social care paid them, and that went towards their costs. So I think there's a lot about, you know, being thoughtful and creative with how you do things. And I don't mean inappropriate or fraudulent. I just mean that, you know, working within the system, but there are ways of making things happen. Okay, so 10 past 8, we've got 20 minutes, so as I said, I was hoping I could finish a bit early and we can throw out some lively debate to you guys and try and, you know, home in on a bit more areas if need be. So we've looked at some goals around leisure and or travel, i.e. cinema, travelling abroad. We've looked at how to plan and prepare, which I think are the most crucial parts of all of this, really. It's all in the planning and preparation. I think as a person I'm not so much into that. I like spontaneity, but it's a lived experience that actually, you know, if you don't check where you're going, the route and the access, then you're probably going to come unstuck on the day. So it's in your interest to look into it. And, you know, that comes back to when Vic looked at the tube and trains. You know, there's a lot of preparation needed in terms of ringing ahead 24 hours before to book the ramp assistance on the train, and obviously with, like I said, flights, you need to phone ahead and sort out everything there as well with getting lifted on the plane and getting the wheelchair looked after. And then, yeah, obviously the overall point is to enjoy your goals. It shouldn't be an arduous, horrible task. It's all about doing nice things. It's about seeing your friends and family and having fun and living life. So these things are essential to get there, but it's all about enjoying it on the way. And then we say considering the goals within the community, country and the world, and then some top tips of useful resources and tricks that I have learned. So let's roll on into the question and answer session. Actually, I've just remembered I had another, you can start typing away, but I had another poll lined up. I'm getting really carried away with these polls now. So this was my question to you as a sort of closing statement. Do you think confidence is the most important factor? And by putting no, you'll be saying that with all the confidence in the world, some of the barriers are still too high. And if you say yes, then you're saying that the barriers are, you know, possible to overcome. But it is about confidence to get you there. So if you all get voting. 44% have voted. I'm loving these polls. Wicked. 67%. Wow, everyone's voted. So 100% of you. Thank you very much. I'm going to close that and then share the answers with you. So as you can say, 89% of you have said yes, which I think is uplifting actually. As much as things can and should improve, it just shows that with that confidence, and I think confidence comes as a result of not having an unknown and being able to put structure around things. So, hopefully with some of the strategies and the diamond theory and the philosophy and the resources, that can give a confidence in itself to people to get out there and try these things. I said sometimes they definitely will go wrong, but you live and you learn. And I promise you that non-disabled people, have times that transport goes wrong or they have a bad day out and a bad night out. So, there's also that element that can't all be wrapped in cotton wool as well. So thank you for participating and humouring me with my polls. I hope it's been as enjoyable for you as it has for me. Right, so we've got some questions coming in now. Right, Michael was saying he was thinking of canal boats earlier on. So yeah, I know that a friend, Katie, who runs PA Pool, did a documentary on ITV about getting on a canal boat. It was adapted, but basically there was this whole documentary about how she was cruising around the waterways of England on an adapted canal boat. So there are ways, and that would come back to research and planning and getting on good old Google and looking at what's out there and finding organisations and that, which I'm sure there are difficulties, but again, it might probably more comes back to money rather than total access, as often things do. Michael also put, in his experience, few cinemas seem to have a policy of PAs or carers go free. Yep, absolutely. So I went on a date a few weeks back and they pushed the clipboard in front of the girl I was out with, assuming she was my carer. So we thought, bugger it, we'll take a 50-50 split on one ticket, Got to take the rough with the smooth or the smooth with the rough, haven't you? But absolutely, PAs and carers tend to go free with cinemas. Trish put, airports are brilliant at seeing your needs. I think there have been bad times as well, but that's one of those you kind of forget those and move on, or if they're terrible you put in a complaint. But I think you're right, they have improved a lot more lately. Vic's put all with kisses. I assume that was the photos, so you have to calm down, Vic, you're getting a bit hormonal at the other end there, mate. Trish put, if you're not happy with something, don't settle for second best. Absolutely agree. Jackie said, have you travelled with a range of airlines or do you have a favourite? When I was seeing my ex-girlfriend who lived in Austria, I had to use Ryanair all the time, and I wouldn't say that they would be the overall favourite, whether that's for disability or general sort of customer experience. But actually, to be fair to them, they always were fine, and I travelled quite a few times to Austria, and Ryanair were good. But I think almost, if, as I said, looking at general customer service or what you pay for what you get kind of thing. Some of the bigger ones like BA, I've not flown Virgin yet. I'd quite like to see how that one goes, but I've heard that that's a little bit more on the ball when it comes to disability. But also bear in mind that the people at the airport that lift you on and off the plane aren't actually from the airline. They're a separate company at the airport, so there's often a disconnect about as much as there's an element of organisation of the airline company, there's a separate group that do the lifting and handling on and off the plane as well. So I'm just reading down the line. Jackie, as a service provider, I'm really interested in what people want from a holiday. I feel we have covered most points: access, support, equipment and transport, but how do I reach what the masses want? Or do you just not believe that people like us really exist? That's a cracking question. I'm assuming, Jackie, are you specific to disability customers, or are you a generic travel agent but looking to sort of ensure that the customer market is seen to. But either way, I think, you can't beat word of mouth really. So there's definitely, once someone has used a particular service with or without a disability and it's all gone very well and smoothly. And like I said, the lady in my local travel agent didn't maybe have a lot of background knowledge, but she listened to me and learned and applied it. So I will always sing her praises and pass that on to people. And then also, don't underestimate the power of the internet. I mean, I've seen it with my blog, Twitter, Facebook. The minute something good is going on and it's blogged or it's shared on Twitter, it can go like wildfire. So I think if the product or the service is authentic and good, word will get out. But of course you can't, be doing proactive marketing. But if you're asking me less about the marketing and more about to understand the needs, then maybe there's something around customer focus groups, or even yourself attending something like today hopefully is going to either teach you new things or confirm things you already knew to give you a confidence. So feel free to probe further on that if I haven't answered it enough, but I'll move on to some of the other questions and come back at me on more if you want to. Jackie also said that Ryanair have been very good with her customers, touch wood. I mean, that's the thing, everyone's going to have a bad experience, and you hear and read about it in the press. When there's a terrible one, that's always going to be shared, but there are hundreds or thousands of travel experiences that are positive, and I can vouch for that. And even when things go wrong, there's always a way of overcoming it. Vic put, confidence is 90% of it, but some things have too much resistance. Depends on how easily you can convince yourself you're satisfied with whatever you had to compromise on. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that lit a fire in my belly to do all the things that I'm doing were working with younger disabled people, because when you're at that sort of teenage years, the world is your oyster, and to hear and see positive experiences of disabled people achieving is going to give you a skew that way. But I think when someone like Vic or myself a bit older, and maybe there are times that things have got a bit tough, if that element becomes the norm, I agree it's harder to be as positive or optimistic when you just see all the difficulties and the things you've had to put up with or settle with, maybe social care, maybe transport issues. But I'd still argue that if you're here to live on this earth once, you've got to make the best of it, and compromise isn't always a bad thing, it's how you look at it. Jackie's confirmed that it's specific for disabled people, so maybe we can have another chat afterwards, Jackie, because it's something I'm very passionate about, is improving travel for disabled people, so I'd happily have a chat with you on that another time if that is beneficial to you. And there's things like Disability Horizons, which Srin and I are running, where we're trying to give a platform for positivity and helpful information, so by all means you could write an article on there as well. Pamela has said, where do young people find out information about their rights to be able to challenge the health and safety or policies and procedures? Rubbish that is often quoted to them. I mean, I don't remember going to any form of learning, teaching, schooling on that. I think that's come with life experience. Probably a little bit when I worked at Scope as well, to be fair. But I know that councils and charities, and if anyone from the JTSMA is on the webinar, feel free to come in if there's services going on there that I'm not as sort of up on. But there are advocacy services, so it would be capacity building someone on how to advocate for themselves, and or a third party could advocate on their behalf. So that would come back to the knowledge would be, okay, there's a barrier, I need to know how to advocate for my rights. So then the solution, the resource would be using the right people, which then may be a family member. So, my mum's gone charging into the school and had a word when things were wrong and sorted them out. But equally, if that wasn't as possible for any reason, there are charities and local councils that are able to support as well. But yeah, I'd say the internet, Pamela, as well. And I think with Twitter and Facebook, I know if I have a question, I can put a little message out to the friends that I've met over time who have disabilities. So I think having disabled people in your peer network is as important as non-disabled people around inclusion. But yeah, all of those types of varieties of information on the internet from friends and from professionals is where I think young people could find that. And he said, how does lifting on the plane work? When I travelled about 6 years ago, the people with me had to do it because of health and safety, supposedly. I've never been told they couldn't lift me. I do have a transit seat. So this comes back